What if everything you thought you knew about parenting needed to be reimagined? When we started understanding sensory processing issues in our child, it felt like so many things clicked into place. Today, I'm sharing a deeply personal chapter of our parenting journey. As parents of a highly sensitive and emotionally intense child, we faced struggles that we didn't fully understand until we discovered sensory processing issues. I'll walk you through how our family came to understand the impact of sensory overload and how it changed the way we parented. If you've ever felt lost or overwhelmed while parenting a child with big emotions, this episode is for you. Tune in for insights, strategies, and a little hope from a family who's been there. Welcome to Calm Connection Parenting. I'm your host, Jamie Kirkbride, mom of 7, parenting coach, professional counselor, and wrangler of big emotions. If you're raising a highly sensitive child with intense emotions or challenging behaviors and wondering if you'll make it through without losing your mind, you're not alone. Around here, we're all about real-life parenting, sprinkled with a little humor and a whole lot of patience. So grab your coffee, trust me, you'll need it, and join me as we explore tips, stories, and faith-based strategies to help you bring more calm and confidence into your chaotic days. Let's do this. From the time I was a little girl, I played with baby dolls like they were going out of style. I mothered them with the greatest of ease and never tired of burping, changing, rocking, dressing, feeding, and talking to my sweet babies. With great joy, I was a mother to many baby dolls. I knew exactly what they needed, and I eagerly anticipated my future days of mothering ahead. Now, some may be embarrassed to admit this, but I remember getting a baby doll for my 12th birthday. I was so thrilled. The only thing that made me a little sad was that I was afraid my mom would never buy me another baby doll. Call me crazy, but maybe I went into this mothering gig with a false sense of confidence or capability. But I can tell you this, in all honesty, there are parts of this mothering journey I don't think one could ever prepare for. The journey of parenting a child with special needs is tough, one probably none of us prepares for. For some, the needs are physically obvious, and for others, those needs may be more hidden, but just as impacting. Today's podcast is a little different. This week, I'm sharing part of our own journey. This is part of our story as we learn to understand our child's unique wiring, intense emotions, and often baffling behavior. It's not that I'm wanting to just sit here and talk about myself, because in all honesty, I might get just a little bit emotional just remembering it. But I think that sometimes when we hear stories and it allows our hearts to connect in a different way, to hear maybe a piece of someone else's story that all of a sudden helps fit something together for us. So that is my hope for you today. So let's jump in. Take just a minute and imagine what you thought parenting would look like. Think about it. When I imagined mothering, it was not much like the reality of today. This thought might make you laugh, as it has me many times over the past few years. In all those preparatory years of mothering, I can tell you, not one of my baby dolls was ever a boy. How was it that I'd missed that one? After all, there's a 50-50 chance, right? Well, without a brother in my life, and being about as girly as girls come, and, well, disliking dirt, germs, noise, animals, and most things outside, well, I felt like I only knew what to do with a girl. Did God have a sense of humor when He sent me 6 boys? I can tell you also that not one of my baby dolls ever had anything different, or as some might perceive, quote unquote, wrong with it. Okay, well, one did. The one that I totally wore her legs and arms off from loving and holding so much. But when my mom duct taped all the limbs back on, she was as good as new to me. No, Others might have thought something was quote unquote wrong with her, but in my eyes, that grimy top knot on her head from carrying her around by her hair, and the dirt scuffs on her face, and the eyes that didn't always blink in unison or maybe sometimes open, well, they were not even noticeable because she was beautiful in my eyes. How I wish I had a picture of her to share. I'm certain you'd look upon her with the same delight as I did. Well, probably not quite the same. As you may have discovered in your own life, mothering does not always turn out exactly as we imagined. This week, as I've been doing some market research projects, I've asked moms that very question. How did you imagine life as a parent would be? Every single one of them has said, well, it's nothing like I imagined. It really can be worlds different, and not all bad, but different. And in so many ways, it really is even better. I mean, I must admit that the journey has been more exciting. I never dreamed that I could or would love a child near as much as I have discovered loving each and every one of my 7 kids. I never imagined having 7 kids, though it's an incredible blessing. I never imagined having 6 boys and 1 girl, and that has been a wonderful adventure. I wouldn't trade a single boy for another girl. I never imagined having kids that talked back. I could do without that. And I never imagined having kids that didn't delight in me as I did them. That's a surprise to all of us parents, right? I never imagined kids with glasses. Simple, but true. I never imagined kids throwing fits. And I wish those didn't exist ever. And I never imagined kids with special needs or who would be high need. And that is where we're going this week. You see, each week as I debate what topic to do a show about, I'm usually flooded with ideas, and weeding out all the choices can be a big job. This week, however, I just kept drawing a blank, except for thinking about the summer that we discovered sensory processing issues and the struggle they introduced to our child's life, mothering, and family life. I have to acknowledge that even as a professional counselor and mom of 7, I had never heard of sensory processing issues. I mean, I knew the senses from elementary science, but nothing much beyond that. And it was a little hard to acknowledge that something wasn't right with our child. Maybe it was a bit of pride in the way. It might be because it touched on my feeling less than equipped in mothering a child with needs that I just didn't understand. It could possibly be because I didn't feel I had a plan or an approach that was effective with him, and I struggled with the idea that we may not get one. Perhaps it was simply that sometimes even those things staring through our windshields are things we'd rather have in our rear view mirror, where they're not front and center in our world. But I clearly remember that summer as we began our journey with one of our little ones, as he was diagnosed with sensory processing disorder, ADHD, depression, and executive functioning disorder. This podcast is dealing primarily with the first part of that, as it came in 2 pieces and with a couple of different days of testing, assessments, and professionals' input. And as I now know, sensory processing challenges are something that many moms are experiencing with their child, and they may not even be aware of what it is, just like I was. Sensory processing is something we talk a lot about in my coaching program, helping parents who are struggling for answers and strategies to help their child. So I know there are many others who are struggling on this journey and impacted as well. It was a slow turn of events getting our child's issues figured out. I started reading books on all those issues over the summer. And as a counselor, I had a pretty good idea of what we were dealing with as far as the anxiety, depression, and, as I thought, ADHD. But nothing quite prepares you for experiencing this within your own family. My own fears grew, and I think I found it easier just to attempt to mother harder and mother better and research more to do it right. But of course, those things didn't work, and I knew that too. My husband, on the flip side, didn't want to entertain even the thought that there might be some issues going on. In fact, each time I brought it up, it was quickly set aside or oftentimes created a good bit of tension. My attempt to modify our child's diet was usually met with resistance, and my husband's desire, as with many men and especially strong ranch men, was just to let him eat what everyone else eats and what people have always eaten. And the thought of a potential ADHD diagnosis seemed to not only frustrate him, but in all honesty at that point, even as he would admit, was a little embarrassing for him to pursue. Now, let me tell you just a little bit about our child. And I'm not going to use his name, but I want to tell you a little bit about him so that you might be able to picture him too. When he was diagnosed, he was 8 years old, and one of the younger ones in a line of 7 kids. He was born after a difficult pregnancy scare with a blood clot that was bigger than him as the embryo when we first discovered it. I was driving my mom home from the hospital after 2 weeks in ICU and 2 additional weeks in a rehab hospital following her near-fatal car accident. And while driving her home, I started bleeding. Until I could see the doctor the following day, I fully feared I was losing my baby to a miscarriage. Thankfully, they were able to see the heart beating when I got into the doctor, but because of the size of the clot, they warned us that there were no guarantees on what would happen, or if we would ever even get the chance to hold this baby. We prayed desperately for our little baby, and that's why his name means God has heard us. He was thankfully safely delivered and developed as usual. In fact, he grew to be a toddler who was very bright and talkative. He kept us hopping. He was very precocious and curious. He was quite brave and moved faster than any of our other children. And it was obvious even early on that he had a pretty strong personality. He tested his boundaries. He wanted control. He had spunk and charisma. He kept us laughing with his crazy adventures and his out-of-the-box funny responses. My understanding of personalities has been a great tool in working with him over the years. In fact, I don't know what I would do without that information in our corner of parenting. But I knew that I needed additional tools in conjunction with the knowledge of personalities. So yes, I read, I researched, I asked questions, I thought, I prayed, I cried. He seemed extra sensitive, extra active, extra emotional, extra needy, extra picky, and I would have to admit, extra challenging. And even in my best mothering, I was having to work hard to find extra care, extra energy, extra understanding, extra time, extra kindness, extra gentleness, extra self-control, extra encouragement, and you guessed it, extra patience. Some kids just need extra. We discovered some little things that would make things a little bit easier as we parented him, and we tried to meet his individual needs. One of those was we kept his diet free of Red 40. This is a food dye that within even just 15 minutes tends to get him all excited, and the roller coaster of emotions would start up and could even affect him for like 3 days. It was a surprise to see how many snacks and foods had this added. A lot of chocolate, things that were colored red, pink, orange, purple, and sometimes even blue and brown. Now, who'd guess that, right? We used high-quality pharmaceutical-grade essential oils in his daily routine. These helped him experience more calm, support for his emotions, and sometimes improved sleep. We worked hard to keep a schedule and routine, even in the summer. We used consistent and predictable discipline and rewards. Despite our best efforts, the struggle was still great. He felt it. I felt it. The whole family felt it. We would feel it from the start of the day and even in the middle of the night because he was often up and out of his room in the middle of the night. I think I vacillated between horribly aware of the impact to wishing it all away, denying it, and putting my head in the sand. Obviously, I didn't want anything to be wrong. I mean, I'm the mom that cried when my second oldest had to get glasses, not because I didn't like them or the idea. Maybe in some way I hoped that nothing would be a challenge, that nothing would be different, or that anything might feel badly about getting glasses. But boy, was God preparing me for the years ahead. Glasses are the least of our concerns now, though we still deal with those too. I think for a while we could chalk things up to immaturity, and that worked. I mean, how much can you expect from a kindergartner, right? In fact, we went into kindergarten year fully prepared to repeat it, as we wanted to allow him some extra time for some maturity and learning to follow the rules, because those were a challenge. Instead, we repeated the first grade year, which we've decided many times over was the best thing we could have ever done. Even as he's getting older, we are so glad that we have that extra age, that extra year of maturity on his side. But as we started into the first grade and then repeated his first grade year, it was becoming more apparent that his emotions were getting more intense. He struggled with many things, including emotional regulation, the feeling and texture of clothing, over and under reactive to sensory things like smells, movement, sounds, temperatures, food sensitivities, body control, processing directions, follow through, anger control, impulsivity, staying on task or following directions, being extra active or underactive, horrible sleep patterns, as I've already mentioned, and sometimes seeming even a little depressed, which in kids sometimes comes out as anger or just not enjoying doing things that they used to enjoy. Now, I'm sure there's probably more, and I'm just not thinking of those in this moment, but I felt like I was working overtime trying to figure out the issues, run far enough ahead so I could outrun the issues, and stick around cleaning up the after effects of issues. It was exhausting, and I truly feel it was a big part of what contributed to my burnout and deep depression several years ago. No amount of trying, planning, or figuring things out was bringing us to a consistent and predictable point with him. So you might be wondering, well, what was your turning point? Well, I'll share that in a moment, but first, I would like to share this. Parenting a uniquely wired child can feel isolating, right? While other parents are talking about typical tantrums and bedtime battles, you're navigating emotional meltdowns, sensory overload, or challenging behaviors that many people just don't understand. It can be frustrating when the advice you hear just doesn't fit your child, and even harder when you feel like you're alone in the journey. But here's the truth. You don't have to settle for just surviving. In the Calm Connection Parent Coaching Program, I'll help you understand your child's unique wiring and give you faith-based practical strategies to not only manage the emotions and challenging behaviors, but actually help your whole family thrive. With video course, workbooks, a supportive community, and weekly coaching calls, you'll get personalized support every step of the way. If you're ready to stop feeling alone and start finding real solutions that work for you, your child, and your family, then visit calmconnectionparent.com to learn more. Together, let's move you from surviving to thriving. Let's do this. So you might be asking, what was our turning point? Well, it went like this. We went on a family vacation one summer. These were historically very challenging for our child. The travel, the lack of routine, the changes in location and beds and food and eating in restaurants and schedule changes, and the mere fact that we were all together in small spaces, touching in the car and sharing seats in a van, all of these things contributed to a very tough vacation. But on one particular night, he had a meltdown of epic proportions. We averaged at least one, if not three or more a day, but this one shocked us all. He laid in bed and sobbed. It would be better if I was dead. Our whole family would be better if I just died. Our whole family, myself, my husband, the older siblings, we stood around the bed and we comforted him, offering him our assuring words of what we loved about him. But on the inside, it shook us all to the core. I honestly think it's a night his older siblings will never forget. And I know my husband and I won't either. It broke our hearts. No 7-year-old should feel that it would be easier if he was dead. No, I don't think he truly understood the whole finality of what death entailed. But with impulsivity aboard, I didn't want to take any chances. I wanted to make sure our responses offered both truth and assurance, and also wouldn't encourage this as, a healthy way to get attention. Because a lot of times when we first start dealing with it, this is what parents might fear. But don't be fooled. Ages of suicide or suicide attempts are getting younger and younger all the time. And it's scary. When children voice these things, these messages need to always be heard and helped. So in those moments, I held him close and I listened. I tried to offer him calm and assurance on the outside, yet my heart was sobbing on the inside as he kept saying, "Our family would be so much better without me. I think I should just be dead." It was apparent to me that his world needed to be understood. I had to be willing to seek more answers, to see what felt so hard for him. And thankfully at this point, my husband agreed. Fast forward a little bit to that later in that summer, we finally found answers, and we were sent to see an occupational therapist. I have to admit, I was a little confused when the pediatrician sent us to see an OT, but this professional offered great insight into what our child's world was like. With significant sensory processing issues, our child didn't take information in as we would, nor was he utilizing the same skills that we do to understand things, respond, or even accomplish a task. As the OT put it, he has to work 10 times as hard as the other kids and still doesn't see the same end result. If that doesn't break your heart, I'm sorry. I do get emotional when I think back to these early days, so pardon my emotion today. Hopefully you know it comes from a place of real understanding. So one such area that we saw these sensory processing issues impacting was his writing. He struggled, and it became more and more apparent the older he got. His writing was messy, and it lacked the structure of letters, sentences, and punctuation. The OT helped explain some of his writing deficits by explaining that he doesn't even feel the pencil in his fingers the same way we do. It would actually be equivalent to us trying to write with our pencil greased up with Vaseline. He has no sense of how firm he's holding it, how hard he should push to write, and even the steady and consistent work between parts of his brain, like the right hemisphere, left hemisphere, and frontal cortex, that helps with word and sentence structure. None of that even worked the same. Through assessment, we learned many things. These were just a few. He does not perceive that one side of his body can do the same thing as the other side of his body. He's unable to stop and start motor function on command accurately. We found that he was unable to keep his balance if not using his eyesight, like if his eyes were closed. He struggles to process things, and especially quickly. We discovered he has great difficulty keeping his body from shutting down when trying to focus. In fact, he yawned over 25 times during the evaluation. Now, as an observant mom, I was embarrassed thinking he was misbehaving. But the OT explained to me that when his brain kicks into the mode to work and figure things out and kind of under duress, it actually shifts into what we would consider a sleep mode with brain waves that are for sleeping. He has a hard time translating what he sees and then duplicating it. His struggles to remember detail for verbal processing is noticeable as well. The OT gave us some helpful drawings that help describe the sensory input and how the foundation of each system builds for the next part of the pyramid. And of course, the skills at the top or even the middle of that pyramid would be difficult or impossible without the structure of the sensory input foundation being solid. There's actually a picture of this pyramid online, and it's done by Williams and Schellenberger if you're interested in finding it. But how helpful and validating it was to hear a professional say that the struggles we were experiencing were real and they made sense. It was also helpful to hear that these sensory processing issues would indeed impact behavioral challenges, daily functioning, interaction with others, family relationships, regulating emotions, self-esteem, and even learning. I guess in some way it helped me understand why our life felt hard no matter what we tried. I kind of felt like crying and hugging that OT all at the same time. Maybe that's what it's like to have your world understood. I mentioned that there were other diagnoses made as well. The ADHD, depression, and executive functioning disorder. But I think the sensory processing has taken the most time to truly understand and digest. And maybe I had to slowly work through each one, and that was just the first one. But I know I'm not alone in this journey and that many other moms are facing challenges as well. I hope to be able to encourage other parents who are working through struggles like we were. These were some of the things that we found to be helpful. A diet free of gluten and red 40. Essential oils for sleep support, emotional regulation, and mood. Vitamin supplements, and sometimes a very small amount of melatonin when needed for sleep. Occupational therapy, physical therapy, neurofeedback, counseling, play therapy, sometimes even pursuing medication options for ADHD and anxiety. And I know every family will have to figure out how they feel about these interventions. And may I encourage just a few other things that we learned really helped our child. You might even want to give some of these a try. Jumping on a trampoline, both outdoor and indoor tramps for us, and they helped a lot. Chewing gum was helpful. As I mentioned, essential oils for calming and sleep. Playing with sensory bin items like sand, water beads, water, popcorn. Following a routine and structure. Lying on the couch with his head hanging down, like upside down. It helps regulate emotions. Playing outside and barefoot is the best. Choices for things, like giving 2 acceptable choices and letting him pick between those choices. Consistency was a must. And, of course, last but not least, grace for the race. Mainly, I just wanted to open the door in this episode to share our story of learning about sensory issues and say, I understand your world and I'm here for you and I care. Sometimes those words feel like gold, especially when you are feeling so worn thin and exhausted from a struggle that is so hard to understand. Honest truth is, it's tough being someone's safe person. As a parent, we are often that closest support person who also gets our child's emotional meltdowns or anger getting directed at us when things fall apart or feel overwhelming. Keep your chin up. Think for just a moment about what you tell yourself in those tough parenting moments. I want to share some of the helpful mantras, or maybe I should say momtras, that have helped me navigate these challenging courses. I can do this, just one step at a time. I am just the mom my child needed. We will find a new normal. I was handpicked to be his mom. There is no perfect way, and I don't have to try for that. It doesn't have to make sense. I may not totally understand, but that's okay. This is our new normal. God, please help me. I'm doing my best. God's got this. Or I'm going to love you the best I'm able. Sometimes we just need those thoughts to just kind of be bubbling through our head when we struggle. So maybe our child has some challenges I hadn't imagined for his life. Maybe I hadn't imagined having such constraints or struggles with parenting and connecting. And even though I never imagined it, I think God's helping put some good old duct tape on the limbs of our situation. I know He will give me what I need for this journey. Maybe not in surplus or in advance as I might wish. And while it may not be exactly as I imagined, my love for our child, just like with all of our other kids, will grow deeper and stronger. And just like the well-loved doll of mine, I will see our child and see things in him that I cherish and delight in. Maybe you have felt some of these same feelings of parenting not being exactly as you imagined. Perhaps your child's special needs more obvious. Maybe it's more invisible. But take heart. You can do this, and I'm here for you. Perhaps you've heard something in our story today that has you thinking you might be dealing with something similar in your child. You might be wondering if what your child is experiencing is normal, or how to know when they need help, or even who to ask for help. You might just simply want someone to help walk through some of what you are seeing and help you put the pieces together. The Calm Connection Parent Coaching Program does just that. And I'll let you know that for a limited time, I will be doing a few one-on-one coaching sessions if you're looking for some help or direction. Additionally, I encourage you to visit calmconnectionparent.com/resource to find helpful tools, cheat sheets, and even our website, parentingwithpersonality.com, for additional tools and resources that can make your parenting easier. And be listening, because we are going to be hosting a parenting summit in May. You won't want to miss it. We will be talking about sensory processing issues there as well. As I mentioned earlier, I had never heard about sensory processing issues as a mental health professional. And as a mom of 7, they hadn't even crossed my mind. But hands down, learning about sensory processing was one of the biggest things that changed the way we dealt with our highly sensitive and emotionally intense child. This insight into his world allowed us to really see how he experienced things, felt things, struggled with things, avoided things, and so much more. What we often felt was anger or defiance was actually him struggling with sensory overwhelm or lacking a skill to cope with the sensory input that was creating the upset. When we learned how to put pieces together, it started to make so much more sense, and it changed the way we handled routines, meals, food, activities, going places, eating, and yes, even how we do vacations. I can't stress enough how important it is to explore this area for your child. You just might be surprised to find the impact it's having. And I can tell you this, when you're open to see the world through your child's eyes and senses, and then you take the time to address their needs, you will be amazed at the connection this can build between you and your child. After all, one of the loudest and best ways you can love your child is to see, hear, and understand them. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Just remember, you've got this. And on the days you don't, well, we're in this together. Take a deep breath and keep building those heart-to-heart connections. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend who might need it too. And don't forget to connect with us at parentingwithpersonality.com or in our Parenting with Personality Facebook support group. We'd love to continue supporting you there. Until next time, keep calm and parent on.